And we're back. So this is Kohlberg's Stages of Moral Development, Part 2. Now, when we left off, we were covering Level 2, Stage 3. I have one more thing I want you to add to your notes before we leave that behind us. And that is when you're in Stage 3, in this good boy, good girl phase, one of the things that you really value is trust and loyalty in your relationships to others. And sometimes that can be your guide when it comes to deciding right and wrong. So with the Heinz dilemma, you'll notice that young boy when he was talking about his grandma, how he would do anything for his grandma. So sometimes at good boy, good girl, because you're focusing on other people's expectations of you and right and wrong is determined by society or people that you care about, trust and loyalty also can be a big factor. Okay, moving forward, still in Level 2 and now Stage 4. So Stage 4 is one of the most clear-cut ones. It's called Law and Order, and it's the idea of, well, you're going to determine right and wrong by looking at the rules and the laws that you're meant to follow, and that those rules and laws are important for society because they help to maintain order. Now, within that realm, students would think something like, well, I can't cheat because it's against the rules, or I shouldn't cheat because it's against the rules. Now, according to most research, the majority of adults, once we hit Stage 4, we just stay here because this makes sense. It's an easy way to decide right from wrong. And oftentimes we don't even realize that there is perhaps something beyond Stage 4. Now here is a clip from Parks and Rec, one of my favorite shows. And it's kind of poking fun at this idea of just simply following the law without thinking about whether or not the law makes sense. Oh, technical difficulty. We're back. Let's try it again.
Force every single old law we have on our books. Hey, can I see your keys for a second? Here's a quarter. I own your car now. What? Sorry, the Pawnee Charter clearly states that any white citizen has the right to seize any Indian property for 25 cents.
That is an outdated and racist law, and obviously they meant American Indian.
Whoa, I think we should be careful when we speculate what the founders intended when they wrote the charter.
Okay, Ted, I know what you're doing. You're quoting me back to me. But I'm going to quote me back to you and say, the Ted Party Day will never change.
Uh-oh, you, a woman, just raise your voice to a land-owning male. According to a Pawnee statute passed in 1868, I get to do this.
Okay, so again, it's that idea that, okay, you can't just blindly follow laws and rules. These laws and rules should make some sort of sense. But still, at Stage 4, the focus is, if you're trying to decide right from wrong, you look at law, you look at rules. And the belief is that we need these laws and that laws need to be followed by the society in order for our community to run smoothly and work effectively, that laws are necessary. So under this idea, if you are in Stage 4 and you're presented with a Heinz dilemma, should Heinz have stolen the drug? This is probably one of the most clear-cut ones. No, because is breaking and entering against the law? Is theft against the law? So if you're in Stage 4, when you hear the Heinz dilemma, you'd go, you know what, it's a horrible shame. And I really wish that there's something you could do for that woman, but you simply can't engage in theft. But a Stage 4 person, that doesn't mean that they're going to give up. They're just going to think within the legal realm of ideas. So they might think about, well, perhaps you could get political and involve your congressman. You could hire a lawyer. You could go to the Better Business Bureau. So they would simply find legal routes to perhaps solve the Heinz dilemma. Here's another description, another way of looking at Stage 4.
Stage 4 is called maintaining the social order. At this stage, people are concerned with society as a whole. They want the world to function correctly, which means they usually want everybody to abide by rules and laws. Although they are essentially taking the same side as Stage 1, obedience and punishment, Stage 1 children have no grasp for how society works as a whole.
I think it was wrong for Heinz to steal the medicine because theft is simply a wrong thing to do, and if he could justify it by the fact that his wife was dying, then anyone could think of a different reason to justify it, and then the world is chaos.
So you can see his answer really fits stage 4 well. The idea that not only is it against the law, but we have these laws for a reason that we all should follow them. All right, so now we're moving into interesting territory, level 3. So level 3 is called post-conventional morality. Some researchers think that only about 10 to 15% of adults make it into level 3. I would say it's probably higher than that today. And also, by simply being in college, your chances of being in level 3 are dramatically improved. So here at level 3, this is the first time where we see that morality is internalized. So level 1, you make decisions based upon me, and what's good for me, and morality is not internalized. Level 2, you're thinking about, you make decisions based upon what other people want you to do, what other people think, how they view you. Okay, so society and laws. Level 3 is the first time that you really have an internal sense of right and wrong, and you think about, what is justice? What does it mean to be fair? Why is it important not to steal? All of those sorts of things. So right and wrong, based upon deeply held internal personal principles and beliefs. Not just based upon what someone else has told you or what seems to be good at the time. So I saw this meme and I thought it was kind of related. So let's go down here first. Obedience, doing what you're told regardless of what is right. And up here, morality, doing what is right regardless of what you're told. So Finn would fit under the idea of level 3. He certainly wasn't following the law. He certainly wasn't doing what was best for him. He was doing what he felt was right by leaving the First Order. Down here, level 1 or level 2 are the stormtroopers who simply do what they're told because they're following some sort of external guide. All right, continuing. So here at level 3, your sense of morality is based upon things like human rights, and what does it mean to be just, and the idea of giving to one what is due to them, which is justice. Okay? So as we know, there are 2 stages. So here we're going to have stages 5 and stages 6. So at stage 5, it's called social contract. Now, here's a note. You might notice that sometimes in our video clips or in books, the stages might have different names. They just do that. They're sometimes interpreted differently, or different theorists will name them different things. I went with the most common name. So stage 5 is typically called social contract. This is where the individual recognizes that laws are important, laws are helpful, and yes, we do need them to maintain order, but a law is only valid if it really serves the best interest of the majority of people. So for instance, in Parks and Rec, when he was going over some of those old laws that were still in the books, yes, they were technically laws, but they don't serve society's best interest, so therefore they should not be considered valid, according to a stage 5 thinker. So, I thought that Batman was a pretty good example of a stage 5 individual, because he doesn't always follow the law. In fact, because he's somewhat of an anti-hero, he works outside of the law. But he does it for the point of maintaining good in society and protecting Gotham and protecting the rights of people in Gotham, even if he's not always following the law. Pardon me, let's move forward. Oh, and another example I had was Robin Hood. So Robin Hood is also kind of an anti-hero because, yes, he does a bit of thievery, but he steals from the rich to give to the poor. So that idea of he's doing it for the better good, even if he might be breaking some laws. All right, so stage 5, social contract. These individuals are going to reason that things like human rights values that we hold are perhaps sometimes more important than the law. So same thing if you think about Robin Hood. So if the people are starving and the king is getting rich from taking all their taxes, he steals that money from the king and gives it back to the people who are poor because they have a right to life. So that could fit, again, within that idea of stage 5 social contract. Another example, this is a great movie if you haven't seen it. It's called John Q with Denzel Washington. And in this movie, his son has an enlarged heart and requires surgery, but he can't get it because his HMO won't pay for it. Sounds a little bit like the Heinz dilemma. So in this case, what he does is he holds up the hospital to force them to do the surgery. So he's doing something illegal. He's breaking the law for the better good, for the idea of the right to life of his son. And again, it is a lot like the Heinz dilemma. It's an interesting movie if you'd like to watch it. Moving forward. And also in stage 5, I wanted to point out that when it comes to cheating, these individuals might think something like, well, we shouldn't cheat because it's not right. We shouldn't cheat because it's not fair to everyone else. So if everyone else is taking the exam fairly and I'm cheating, not only am I at an unfair advantage, but it's not fair to everyone else who worked hard and is doing their own work. You might have also noticed this little picture I have here. Stage 5 fits very well with our idea of democracy, that we lay something out to a vote and the majority rules because we're interested in trying to have laws and a society that meets the needs of the majority. So, stage 5, social contract, should Heinz have stolen the drug or not? This one would probably be a thumbs up because the idea that right to life, more important than the law, and that also that perhaps right to life is more important to right to profit or right to property. So stage 5 social contract would probably say yes, he was okay to steal that drug. Here's a video description of stage 5, and you'll also see an adult in stage 5 talk about the Heinz dilemma.
Stage 5 is called social contract and individual rights. At this stage, people define what a good society means for them, realizing that there isn't only one straight answer to the way the society should be. They compare human rights to the law and are very theoretical about the way the world should be.
So I guess in a way, for me, the greatest good is the sanctity of human life. And although one can understand from the pharmacist's standpoint that he had his rights, and certainly those were protected under the law. In other words, the law was behind the pharmacist, not behind Heinz. There are lots of instances, most prominently that comes to mind with me is the civil rights movement, where the law was really on the wrong side of morality and doing the right thing. It took someone like Martin Luther King and the people surrounding him to realize that just because there were laws in place that, in a sense, created this social order in the South, they saw that that wasn't the greatest good. The greatest good was to, in a sense, assert the dignity of human beings. In this case, African Americans, and if that meant breaking the law, then so be it.
Now, in his answer, he talked about Martin Luther King, and we will be talking about him. But in my opinion, and in my readings, I feel that Martin Luther King fits under stage 6. So his answer was a bit of a bridge between stage 5 and 6. So again, at stage 5, it's the idea that laws are only just if they fit the needs of the majority and if they help to maintain the social order, that just don't take the law as written. You need to weigh it also within the idea of individual human rights. So again, his answer kind of bridged a little bit into stage 6. So stage 6 is called Universal Ethical Principle. This is one of the ones that's more difficult to understand, and it is quite easy to confuse 5 and 6. So at stage 6 is the idea that You have a internal moral standard, but this time what makes it a little bit different is the idea that it's based upon universal human rights. So not just looking at what's best for the majority. So this moves beyond the idea of a democracy and looks at the idea of, are there perhaps rights for all human beings? Are there perhaps things that we should and should not do as human beings on this planet, regardless of what country you're living in or what laws you're under? So it's stage 6. An individual, when it comes to cheating, would say, well, you know what, in order for grace to be meaningful and just, everyone has to do their own work. So again, in stage 6, you're thinking more about the fact that, well, you don't want that unfair advantage. Whereas at stage 6, it's the idea that, you know what, in order for grades to have meaning, for an assessment to be true, it has to be based upon one's own work, and everyone should do their own work. I love this quote. So this is from Nelson Mandela. To deny people their human rights is to challenge their very humanity. Nelson Mandela, his writings and the work that he did definitely fits under the idea of a stage 6 thinker. Adding to this, so this is an individual who thinks beyond the rules, who thinks beyond the majority, so it's not just the idea of majority rules, and tries to find common principles of justice that transcend even cultural norms. Now, this is different from some of the things that we talk about in society today. We talk about the idea of cultural relativism, and that what's okay in one country may not be okay in another country. Stage 6 doesn't think that way. Stage 6 says, you know what, perhaps, regardless of what country you're in, that there are, again, some universal human rights. Here's another example. Mahatma Gandhi also would fit as a stage 6 thinker. Even if you are a minority of one, the truth is the truth. So again, the idea that the majority may be against you, but it's the idea of what's truly important is the truth. And what's truly important is the idea of what is right, not what's popular, not what people in the past have thought, but what is truly right and good. To add to stage 6, this is an individual who would think something like this question: what is moral across the globe? And I've got some examples for you from global events to try to put you in this mental space, but I do want to give you a heads up that some of these are a little bit shocking, okay? So depending upon who you have in the room with you. Did you know that in Malta, that if a kidnapper abducts someone, but then forces them to marry them, they're not liable for prosecution? So you can kidnap someone, make them marry you, and then you're no longer going to get in trouble for it. In Nigeria, a husband is allowed to beat his wife as long as he does it for a good reason, as long as it's for the purpose of correcting his wife. So, again, these are things that are in the law books in different countries and considered okay by the majority of people in those countries. What about these? So these come from countries that are under Sharia law. So here we have a woman being lashed under Sharia law for speaking to a man that was not her husband. Okay, she wasn't doing anything that we would consider against the law or improper. Simply speaking to a man that was not her husband. If you are a married woman under Sharia law, you're not allowed to speak to any man other than your husband. Here we have Sharia law cops caning a woman and 2 men because they had sex before marriage. So premarital sex is against the law, and again, caning in public. Here we have Sharia court sentencing a gay couple to 85 lashes because they were found in bed together. So first of all, I am kind of wondering, how are they found in bed together unless the police are allowed to break into your house to see what you're doing? But regardless, 85 lashes in public simply for being a gay couple. Here's another one. This one is a bit older in the news, but I do recall this one. So this was an American who was in Singapore, and he was caught vandalizing. He had seen some propaganda posters, and I think he had taken some down and was going to take them home with him. He pleaded guilty to 5 charges of vandalism and mischief and keeping stolen property, again, of just posters, of propaganda posters that were out in public. And he was sentenced to caning. Now, I mentioned caning before, and in case any of you don't know exactly what I mean by caning, this is a digital recreation of what caning looks like in Singapore to give you an idea of what his sentence was going to be. For, again, vandalizing and taking posters that were up on the streets in Singapore. All right, so why did I show you these examples? It's because of this, the idea that in these examples, caning, stoning, beating, kidnapping, etc., in those instances, if I'm a stage 4 thinker, I would say, well, those things are the law in those countries. I may not like it, but I don't live there, and in their country it's okay, but in my country it's not. If I'm in stage 5, I would say, okay, well, yes, it's the law, but also if the majority of people in that country agree with Sharia law, agree with those laws, again, it's an accepted cultural norm for them. It's just different there than it is here. If I'm in stage 6, universal ethical principle, I would say perhaps there are certain things that are ethically wrong across the globe. That perhaps you shouldn't be allowed to beat your wife just to teach her a lesson. That a woman shouldn't be beaten for speaking to someone. And that gay couples shouldn't be lashed in public. Okay? That's what I'm getting at. So, the last point I want to make on stage 6 is when this individual is faced with a conflict between the law and their conscience, they're going to follow their conscience even if it involves personal risk. So they're going to say, you know what? I might get arrested. I might get thrown in jail. I might get beaten up by those cops, but I'm going to do what's right because it's what my conscience says. And here's why I want to bring in Martin Luther King Jr. I think this quote is perfect for stage 6. I submit that an individual who breaks a law that conscience tells him is unjust and who willingly accepts the penalty of imprisonment in order to arouse the conscience of the community over its injustice is in reality expressing the highest respect for the law. To me, that really shows the height of moral reasoning. All right, so if you're in stage 6, should Heinz have stolen the drug or not? Hopefully it's pretty obvious that this one would be a thumbs up. That idea that across the globe, we shouldn't let people die just because we don't have the exact amount of money to pay for their medicine. That we should try to save people if we can. And that Heinz, and again, that if I'm Heinz, I would say, you know what? I'll steal the drug. I'll break in. I'll steal it. I'll save my wife's life. And yeah, maybe I'll go to jail. Maybe I'll even, go to court and get in prison for some time, but it might be worth it. All right, so before we end, I wanted to give us some sample questions because these stages can be hard. So I'm going to be showing you some signs and advertisements, and we're going to try to see what level or what stage it's in. So let's get started with this commercial.
They'll see you before you see them. Cops are cracking down on drinking and driving. Drive sober or get pulled over.
Okay, let me pull up my question. So, which one is it? I'll give you a second to look. If you're thinking punishment avoidance, you're right. Now, let me explain. So if you're thinking, well, no, law and order, there was police, he's going to get arrested. They never once said it was against the law. The commercial said, they will see you before you see them. drive sober, or get pulled over. So everything they said was basically saying, you will get caught. You will get in trouble. They never necessarily said that it's against the law, even though police were involved. So they were doing this commercial about drunk driving, aiming it towards the age group of children. The idea of thinking that perhaps people who make those decisions might be reasoning at lower levels. All right, here's another one. We'll see if I can get it to play. Let me see here. Oh, all right, I got it working now. This one was a public service announcement that used to run in movie theaters.
Come on, man.
Just do it quick. No one's watching. You have to if you want to hang with us.
The other one, too?
All right, so he does a nice thing. He had stolen some CDs and he returns them. At what level is the young man? All right, if any of you are thinking, good boy, good girl, you're correct. Because it's not punishment avoidance. He had already gotten away with it, so he had already stolen them. He was actually taking a bigger risk coming back to the store with them. Okay, so he obviously wasn't concerned about getting in trouble. I also don't think that he had a sudden epiphany that, oh, stealing is against the law and I shouldn't do that. Everything in the video said to me that the only reason he is returning those is because of his friends. His friends are saying, you have to return them if you want to hang with us. So he's doing it based upon their expectations of him. Okay, so what about this one? This is a pretty common sign you see around town. Buckle up, it's the law. What do you think? This is one where we finally do have law and order. I mean, that's all it says. Buckle up. Why buckle up? Because it's the law. That's it. They don't give any other rationale as to how it might save your life or anything like that. Pardon me. Okay. So, before we leave this behind, I do want to point out there are some criticisms of Kohlberg. There are also other theories out there, like Carol Gilligan's theory of moral reasoning. So first of all, we do believe that he underestimated young children. In your next segment, while we're looking at moral development, we're going to look at the development of things like empathy, and we're going to see young children were perhaps capable of more than Kohlberg first thought, that they aren't just completely self-centered. He didn't study things like the role of compassion and the fact that feeling someone else's pain and having empathy for someone might drive you to be helpful. He just didn't really look at that in terms of social connection. And he primarily studied men, which is why Carol Gilligan is another theory that's interesting to look at, because she is one who really pulled out this fact that, you know what, he really just studied men, and perhaps we'll get a different theory, a broader model if we look at a more diverse population. And again, Carol Gilligan, one of the things that she did find was that females are more likely to weigh their relationships with others when making moral decisions. So men were more likely to take the approach that we just saw in this stage theory, whereas at different steps women think about things like how it might impact or how their relationships might play a role in their decisions. All right, so that is it. And for the next part, we will be looking at things like developmental considerations and how to apply this in the classroom. But for now, thank you and goodbye.